There is something that doesn't add up. You see it, you feel it, but you can't name it. A woman stands behind a bar. Her hands rest on the cold wood. Her gaze crosses the space and finds you, only you. Behind her, an enormous mirror returns the reflection of the entire hall. Hundreds of people, flickering lights, the full noise of the modern world, and yet something in that mirror is wrong. Her reflection appears displaced, shifted to the right, and beside it, inexplicably, the figure of a man in a top hat who exists nowhere else in the painting. Where is that man? Where is she really? This is a bar at the Folies-Bergere, the final masterpiece of Édouard Manet, and for more than 100 years, no one knew with certainty whether it was a brutal mistake or the most sophisticated trap ever painted. Today, we find out together it was 1881. Édouard Manet was 49 years old, and his body was betraying him. Syphilis, that disease that doctors of the era barely dared to whisper, was advancing mercilessly through his nerves, his legs, his hands, those hands that had scandalized Paris, that had painted a naked woman eating in a field surrounded by fully dressed men, that had depicted the execution of a Mexican emperor with the cold detachment of a war correspondent, that had captured the discomfort of modern life with a brutality that was, at the time, utterly misunderstood. Those hands were now trembling, and yet Manet asked for Suzon to be brought to him. Suzon was one of the barmaids at the Folies-Bergere, the most celebrated cabaret in Paris. To understand the painting, you have to understand the place. The Folies-Bergere was not simply a bar. It was the beating heart of Parisian modernity, a space where the bourgeoisie and the bohemian brushed shoulders under the same electric light, still a novelty that left people breathless. Trapeze artists flew over the heads of customers, singers, dancers, magicians, and amid all that spectacle, women like Suzon stood behind a counter, selling drinks, smiles, and in many cases considerably more than that. The line between barmaid and courtesan at the Folies-Bergere was deliberately blurred. Manet knew it, and he wanted to paint it exactly that way. Manet set up an artificial bar in his studio. He had bottles, fruits, and flowers brought in. He placed Suzon behind the counter and began to paint. What no one knew then was that he was painting his farewell. Look at her hands in the canvas. They wear no gloves. In Parisian society of the 19th century, that said everything. She was not a guest. She was part of the furniture, one more object on the bar, alongside the oranges, the lemons, and the bottles of Bass ale with their small red triangle. That triangle, by the way, was the first registered trademark in history, and Manet included it as a quiet, almost political gesture in a Paris that was still bleeding from the Prussian occupation. Every object on that bar was a message. Manet was always like that. And then there is Suzon herself. Her face is one of the most enigmatic in all of 19th century painting. She does not smile, she does not frown, she does not seem to be anywhere in particular. Her expression is what philosophers would call a suspension, neither here nor there, neither present nor absent. A woman who has learned to exist in two places at once, her body at the bar, and her mind somewhere no one can reach her. Manet painted her that way because he saw her that way, because that empty, dignified gaze was for him the most honest face of modernity, not that of politicians or generals, the face of a woman standing behind a counter on a Tuesday night. In 1882, the painting arrived at the Paris Salon. The reaction was immediate. Critics were quick to point out what they considered the clumsiest mistake of a master in decline. Le Journal Amusant published caricatures. Academics in their fur-trimmed coats crowded around the canvas, pointing and laughing. The argument was simple and apparently devastating. If the woman is facing the viewer, looking straight ahead, her reflection should appear directly behind her, perfectly centered. That is what the laws of optics dictated. But in Manet's painting, the reflection was to the right, displaced, and the man she was apparently speaking with was visible in the mirror, but invisible in the actual space of the painting. For them, the conclusion was cruel but clear. The master's mind was fading. Syphilis had reached the brain. Manet, the great provocateur, had made a mistake that not even an apprentice would make. He died the following year, in April of 1883, and he took the secret with him, or so everyone believed. For more than 100 years, the debate did not die down. Generation after generation of art historians returned to the painting. Some defended it passionately. It was an exploration of modern alienation, a woman present and absent at the same time, inhabiting two different realities. The mirror was not reflecting physics, it was reflecting psychology. Others insisted on the opposite. It was simply a mistake, the final delirium of a sick man. And there was a third theory, darker and more interesting, that Manet had done it on purpose, but for compositional reasons, not geometric ones, that he sacrificed optical precision for visual drama, that he chose the beautiful lie over the boring truth. The mirror of the Folies-Bergere became the mirror of art history itself. Everyone saw in it exactly what they wanted to see. The trapeze artist's boots peek out from the upper left edge of the painting, a pair of feet hanging in the air, free above the world, a brutal contrast to the figure of Suzon, anchored to her counter, unable to move, unable to escape. The oranges on the bar, bright and perfect, symbols of trade and social decay, the rosé champagne, the bouquet of flowers beside the dark glass, the crystal of a yellow liqueur that catches the light like liquid gold, all arranged with a deliberateness that belongs neither to chance nor to a broken mind. Manet was an obsessive builder. He spent months composing every detail of that bar in his studio, with his feet already nearly numb, forced to sit to paint what he once would have done standing. Every centimeter of that canvas had been thought through, and thought through again, and thought through once more. But then, why the mirror? In the year 2000, an Australian researcher named Malcolm Park decided to put an end to the debate once and for all. Park was not a conventional art critic. He was a man of geometry, of angles, of spatial reconstruction. And he brought to the painting something that the critics of the 19th century never had: a camera, a three-dimensional model, and a mathematician's compass. He reconstructed the Folies-Bergere in 3 dimensions, not from assumptions, but from the data the painting itself contained: the proportions of the bar, the height of the mirror, the angle of the bottles, the position of every object. It was all there, encoded in the paint like coordinates waiting for someone who knew how to read them. He calculated the exact position of the bar, the mirror, and the viewer, and then he applied the laws of optics with surgical precision. What he discovered was extraordinary. If the viewer was not standing directly in front of Suzon, but slightly displaced, slightly oblique, the reflection they would see in the mirror would be exactly the one Manet painted, exactly, not approximately, not within an artistic margin of error, with a geometric precision that silenced everyone who had spent a century laughing. Manet was not viewing the scene from the front. He was painting it from an angle, and the painting was built for a viewer who is also not standing exactly straight ahead. The mistake was a mechanism, a sophisticated mechanism that did exactly what Manet had always done: made you uncomfortable, made you complicit, turned you into the man in the top hat who is in the mirror but not in the painting. You are the customer, you are the transaction, you are what Suzon looks at without seeing. The dying man had won. 117 years after his death, there is something deeply human about this story. A man who knows his time is running out, whose feet are sick, whose body is exhausted, and who nonetheless gets up every morning to build with brush and linseed oil. a puzzle that the world will take a century to solve. He did not do it to be understood immediately. He was not looking for easy applause or the validation of the same critics who had ridiculed him throughout his entire career. He did it to be understood someday by someone who would take the time to truly look, to look not as one looks at an object, but as one looks at a question. Suzon is still there, behind her bar, with her bare hands resting on the cold wood, looking at you, waiting for you to finally notice. The mirror does not lie. It only asks you to change your angle. This video was produced for Hidden Intellects with the support of artificial intelligence tools. We are fully aware, and we say this with complete conviction, that no technology compares or will ever compare to the real work of an artist. The genius of Manet, the story of Suzon, the devotion behind every single brushstroke, that is human, irreducible, and irreplaceable. We deeply admire and respect all real artists in every era and every form of expression. If this video made you see differently, it has already done its job.